Hi, everybody. All right, let's get started for our activity with doing our transition song, and then I'll tell you about our activity this week. Eyes are watching, ears are listening, voices quiet, body safe. This is how we listen, this is how we listen to the teacher, to the teacher. Okay. So this week we are learning about camping, and we are going to talk, before we talk about camping, we're going to go over some words that you would hear about while camping, as well as Miss Darcy will show you some of her household items that she has that she takes camping. Okay? So one of our words for camping is backpack. Just like this. This is Miss Darcy's backpack that she takes camping. Backpack. And then you would need this at night. A lantern or a flashlight. Another word you would use while camping are marshmallows. Marshmallows. Okay, and now some animals you might see camping. A rabbit. A rabbit. You might also see a scary animal. A bear. You might see a bear while camping. Or you might see a deer while camping. Or another animal you might see is a squirrel while camping. Some other things you might see while camping is a tree. Ooh, campfire. And last but not least, another thing you will see while camping is a tent. Tent. Okay, so now friends, after talking about our camping words, we are going to read a story called Curious George Goes Camping. And we can keep a lookout for any of the words we just went over in this book. So let's see. This is George. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. This weekend, George and his friend, the man with the yellow hat, had special plans. They were going camping. At the campsite, the man with the yellow hat unpacked their gear while George looked at all the tents. Oh, there's one word we just talked about, tents. He saw tents for big families and one just right for a puppy. There were even tents on wheels. Would you like to help me put up our tent, George? The man asked. George was very happy to help. It would not be hard to set up the tent, he thought. But it wasn't easy. George, why don't you fill our bucket with water at the pump? His friend suggested. We'll need it for our campfire. Ooh, I see another word we just ran up over too. Campfire. When we roast marshmallows, we will need that bucket of water. Marshmallows. Ooh, marshmallows. We just learned about that word too for camping. George loved marshmallows. He couldn't wait to try them roasted. Now, don't you wander off and get into trouble, the man warned. But George didn't hear him. He was already gone. At the pump, George worked the handle up and down, up and down. Soon his bucket was full. On the way back down the trail, he saw a family packing up. George watched a girl pour her bucket of water on a campfire. The fire sizzled out. George thought it looked fun. He poured his bucket of water on the next campfire. "Hey," yelled the camper, "we weren't finished with that yet." The camper began to chase George, but George didn't mean to cause trouble. Now he only wanted to hide. He ran into the forest as fast as he could, but the camper's footsteps followed close behind. George ran faster and faster. The footsteps came closer and closer until suddenly they were passing George. Why, it was not a camper chasing George now. It was, one of our other words we just went over, a deer. A deer. What fun to run with a deer. Forgetting all about the camper and the marshmallows, George ran after the deer. But a little monkey can't run as fast as a deer in the woods. Before long, George was lost and all alone. He felt tired and stopped to rest. At first he was worried. He was very far from camp, but there were lots of other animals to keep him company. He saw a lizard sunning on a rock. Another animal that we talked about, a squirrel chattering in a tree. Then he saw the trail of a black and white kitty. The tail of a black and white kitty peeking out from under a bush. He was curious. Would the kitty like to play? George gently pulled the kitty out. But it wasn't a kitty. It was a skunk. Ooh. And it was scared. The skunk lifted up its tail and sprayed. Whew! The spray smelled awful. The animals tried to get away. George wanted to get away too, but he could not. The smell was all over him. How could he ever get rid of this awful smell? He wondered. Too bad he could not take a bath in the woods. Then George had an idea. He could wash the smell off in the creek. George jumped in the cold water. He splashed and scrubbed, but he was still smelly. And now he was wet too. But what could he do? George thought and thought. If he climbed up a tree to dry off, would the smell blow away? No, even dry and high up in the tree, George did not smell better. Poor George, he wished he hadn't wandered so far from camp. He suddenly wished he were roasting marshmallows with his friend. Suddenly, George heard footsteps heading toward him. Someone was coming. It was the forest animals. But they ran right by him. They had seen something scary. And George saw it too. It was a fire. George had gotten into trouble for putting out one fire. But this fire wasn't in the campground. This was an emergency. Quickly, George climbed down the tree, grabbed his bucket. He scooped it full of water in the creek. Then, being careful not to spill, he climbed back up and swung from branch to branch through the trees. When George got close enough to the fire, he reached down and poured the water on the flames. Out went the fire with a big hiss. Just then, George's friend rushed out of the forest with the ranger. "George," he called, "I was afraid you would be here." "It's a good thing you were here, George," the ranger said. "We saw smoke from the campground, but you put this fire out just in time." George was glad to help, and the man with the yellow hat was glad to see that George was safe. But he had a funny look on his face. "George," he asked, "what is that smell?" Back at the campsite, George's friend helped him get rid of the awful smell after a strange bath in tomato juice. George smelled fine. Then the man with the yellow hat invited the ranger to cook dinner with them over their own small campfire. "Fires can be nice if you're careful," said the ranger. George agreed, especially for roasting marshmallows. Okay, so we went up over our camping words, some things that you need to go camping, and some things that you might see while camping. And we read our book, Curious George Goes Camping, and we saw some of our sight words for camping in there, or our word wall words, in other words. And that will be it for camping. I will post up some other fun activities later on this week with some marshmallows, and we'll do some measuring with marshmallows. And I hope you friends have a great rest of the day. Bye, everybody.